Hey, everybody, I did it. I pushed the button without Jim. Jim fell in a hole. He's in Fay Muncie. He just can't keep away from that place. It's getting kind of sad, actually. Um,
He's addicted.
Today, he's addicted. That's never eat the food when you go to a Fay touched place because nothing will ever taste as good. Just ashes in his mouth. I feel for the guy. I do. It's a shame, but he's left us here alone to contend with Casual Friday. Some regulars showing up in the comments early, in fact. Thank you. Love you guys. And yeah, 100 people versus a gorilla, maybe two guys versus the gorilla of internet podcasting news. What are we doing? I'm not sure. We'll find out today on this episode of Casual Friday. We also got news. Guess what? A lot of it's bad. We're just some good news, some catching up. We're going to talk about the new cool stuff that we made that you can have tariff free. We had a very interesting conversation hit the YouTube airways between Matt Colville and Quinn's of Quinn's Quest 2 TTRPG Tube giants fighting like two kaiju in the middle of I don't know, a Zoom call. And then we're talking about monsters. Last week was Monster Week. We're doing it again next year. What is that going to look like? And just how to make boss monsters feel like boss monsters, because sometimes they don't. So welcome everybody. Weigh in the comments right now. 100 men, one gorilla. Who will win? It's all the internet's been talking about. My first impulse was like, my money's on the gorilla. I think because people are bad at math, it's hard to like scale out what 100 people would be. But like me versus a gorilla, I would lose 100 times in a row. Right? Where do you fall on that? Zero guns,
zero guns,
zero rocks, zero clubs.
Yep.
In some stipulations, they can't strategize, but like that's all. And then that's what humans do. So yeah, they can talk to each other, but that's it.
Yeah, this has been the weird question of the week on the internet. But yeah, so I thought we'd break all this down Dungeons and Dragons style. But yeah, my gut reaction is like gorilla, hands down, like 100% gorilla. But then people start throwing out all these. But yeah, just sheer body weight, like if all 100 just pile on the gorilla, it's been kind of a fun distraction from the dumpster fire that is the nightly news, right?
That I think is the point. It does feel I'm sympathetic to Nacho here. It does feel like a weighty question, and I'm not sure why. It feels like I need to know the answer to this just in case it comes up. I don't know what lizard brain part of me like is responding in that emotional context, but like if we run the numbers, turns out the people are probably going to win, even if they're commoners. Me and Brad did a lot of math about it. I don't know if it's as entertaining as the theoretical narrative side of the game.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, what makes it interesting to me is there is no gorilla stat block for 5th edition, right? Is that we have what you're showing now is the ape stat block, and the art there makes that look like a chimpanzee, and is what challenge rating 1/2. So yes. that feels about right for a chimpanzee. I mean, chimpanzees, from what I understand, can be pretty vicious and maul a person pretty well. But like we're talking about a gorilla, so we're definitely we've got to move up from the challenge rating 1/2. And the other primate stat block we have in D&D Beyond, at least, is the baboon, which is challenge rating 0. So we don't really have a good option until we get to the giant ape, which is like a huge size challenge rating. Was it like challenge rating 9 or something like that? So that's like King Kong.
Exactly.
So yeah, so the exercise like we ran into is like, first of all, we have to establish what challenge rating is a gorilla. Like clearly it's more than this ape stat block at chimpanzee level challenge rating 1/2. And is a gorilla that much of a step up? Like if we go from baboon to ape stat block, we're going from 0 to 1/2. Do we take the similar kind of jump from ape to gorilla? If so, that makes it a challenge rating 2. So this becomes the question for the chat. Other animals that are challenge rating 2 are like an Allosaurus and the polar bear. So can a gorilla hang with a polar bear? That was the question we ran into.
And it's funny, bears are my low CR banana for scale. It's like, okay, if this chimp, right? Because ape is a big category. All chimps are apes, not all apes are chimps, and chimps are horrifying. This dude's he's rocking a 16 in strength. All right, so how many? I would posit that three chimps in a trench coat equals one gorilla. maybe it's two, but I think it's three. So that's getting us in that CR2 neighborhood again. But a polar bear versus a gorilla, my money, yeah. I'm gonna agree with Ross here. Polar bear are terrifying. I think a lot of us autocomplete like just take a brown bear and make it white and give it like frost resistance or whatever in D&D terms. But like polar bears are like an order of magnitude scarier still than brown bears, which I should say would destroy probably 100 people. So I like the brown bear, at least from my zoological hat, maybe not my game master hat.
Right. So that's kind of landing on the gorilla as a challenge rating 1 creature, I think is fair, right? But then you do the math on that, and right, challenge rating 1, we're talking around 25 hit points. Commoners, base 10 strength. According to the internet, theme of this, right, is the commoners would not be able to have a club. So now they're just doing 1 hit point of, punching or kicking damage. And of course, D&D action economy and grid combat, you're looking at 8 commoners able to hit the gorilla per turn. And if we go with the challenge rating 1, we're assuming the gorilla has 2 attacks, right? Mm-hmm. So, and commoners having 4 hit points, the gorilla's murdering 2 people a turn at this point. The only way the commoners can get more attacks is if some of them move away to let other ones come in. So theoretically, you could have 8 attack and then move away, and then 8 more move in and attack, right? But then the gorilla gets an opportunity attack when they move away. So now the gorilla is killing 2, maybe 3 people a turn. And mathematically, right, if we played it out D&D style, the commoners eventually win. But we're probably looking at math-wise, what did we say, losing 30?
It was like 20, I think 22 when we did the back of the envelope math yesterday. It's basically, yeah, every round 2.5. The gorilla's hitting way more than the commoners, but there's more commoners. It was like 20 some odd people were dying.
Right. And now, I know 5th edition doesn't have morale checks, but previous editions did. And this is where the argument, breaks down for the humans, in my opinion, is how many people are you going to watch get mauled to death before you give up on this endeavor?
Yeah, I think that's at the heart of this question and why I roll morale in my games, running a pretty straight 5e system or not, because in this hypothetical scenario, you have 92 people waiting in line for their chance to get killed by a gorilla. So I don't care what the plan was before initiative was rolled. Things are going to go weird fast, and that's we're not even at the crunch level of like, all right, there's 2 dead bodies in this square already. Is this difficult terrain? Do you have disadvantage on your attack roll? Are we playing with like insanity rules? Where's it? Right. Where are the limits here?
Yeah, returning to the back of the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide for the madness rules. Mm-hmm. And now the internet version of this is that they're not allowed to have weapons. But like the gorilla, once he rips a couple people in half, why is he not picking up limbs and using those as weapons? So not only is the morale check based on how many people have died before your eyes, it's what does it feel like to get beat to death by your friend's leg? Like you just, your friend Rick's femur is now being used to bludgeon you about the head. Are you still going to stay in this fight?
I'll see that and raise you if we're allowing the commoners optimal tactics here, right? Perfectly surrounding, not letting any any space or instance go to waste. If I'm a gorilla, I'm not waiting for you to be dead to use you as a weapon, right? If I hit one guy with another guy, that's 2 for 1. That's just efficiency. And like, does a gorilla have weapon mastery? If I hit somebody with a commoner, does cleave kick in? He's got a lot of momentum. I'm sure it's been a long time since I calculated torque, but like, there's a lot of force, a lot of newtons coming through you because you just got hit with Jed. It would be rough. I mean, I would give the gorilla just like AoE, stick out his arms and spin around in a circle. That's 8 commoners now. Oh boy, that changed the action economy real quick.
Now we're getting into 3.5 territory with whirlwind attack.
Does the gorilla have rage? Right, I would give it rage at like bloodied, and now he's essentially got double the hit points. I don't need any damage buff against these commoners, but give me resistance.
Yeah, that's a funny thing to think about too. Like, since we don't have a gorilla stat block, and if we were going to build one, what monster traits are you going to use to build your gorilla with? And that's one of the things that is in the new rules, right? You get the bloody condition, and then you get a bonus on an attack, right? Also,
his background. How many? He's got the lucky feet too, so you guys are in real trouble.
How many feet can the gorilla take? Yeah. But I would also argue that the gorilla would have some variation on the pounce ability, like the or the orc's aggressive trait, because gorillas charge. Like, I don't know, I've been charged by a gorilla and it was scary as hell. Thankfully, I was at a zoo and there was glass between me and the gorilla, but I like the front of my brain knew I was safe, but like my lizard brain's like, whoa, what's going on? But yeah, that was an interesting encounter. Watching this gorilla just look up at this group of us and just charge straight at us. I think he thought it was when I was working at a group home. It was me and a bunch of teenage boys and my coworker. I think the gorilla thought we were like another like tribe of gorillas and decided that he needed to intimidate us and charged at us and pounded on the glass. It was intense.
Yeah, there isn't really much of a intimidate mechanic in 5 or 5.5 for the monster to the player. Like, I would give baseline gorilla like intimidate for sure. Maybe like a dragon's fear aura is maybe one step too far, but some sort of like the point you keep coming back to is if there's 100 people in the room, a very large percentage of them are going to turn and run the second things start to go down. I was very, very tempted to pull in some Pathfinder. The gorilla is flat-footed, so I will give them that.
Let's see. So yeah, I just pulled up the Pathfinder archive methods here. There is a gorilla stat, of course, because Paizo is way more thorough than WotC.
Yes.
And what are we looking at here? Man, I mean, it's a disappointing 19 hit points, but a 14 armor class. So, but yeah, I mean, I think if we do it D&D wise, like math wise, the gorilla loses, right? But we're still factoring a cost of 20, maybe 30 dead commoners in the process. So I don't know. I don't know if we solved it. Technically, D&D says the gorilla loses, but there's a lot of humans that lose in the process.
And the other ones you survived are never going to be the same.
That's a whole nother issue. How much PTSD did we give the 60 survivors, 70 survivors?
Speaking of tyrannical apes throwing barrels from on high and ridiculous things taking over the internet, hey, guess what's not going away yet?
Oh gosh, tariffs. I hate that we have to talk about this again, but it's in the news again. I do want to circle back around from last week. I mentioned the game company that is suing the United States executive branch. And I mentioned it because it came up off the cuff while we were talking about this topic, but I couldn't remember which game company it was. It's Stonemaier Games. They're the ones that make Wingspan and all the Wingspan variants, if you're familiar with that game. Not RPG.
Finspan just hit the shelves. If you walk into any TTRPG or whatever, any game shop, you're going to see a flying fish everywhere. If you haven't played Wingspan, it's good. It's beautiful art. It's got great strategic depth. And hey, they are filing a lawsuit saying like this is not actually the president's job in the first place, which is true constitutionally.
Right. And basically, I don't think they expect to win this lawsuit. But I think they're trying to draw attention to the fact that whatever the actual goal of these tariffs are, that's all debatable, I think, and not a topic we're going to get into today. But whatever the actual goal of these tariffs are, the side effect is it's dramatically harming the board game industry in particular. And also alongside of the board game industry, the strategy game and the role-playing game industry. So, and that's how it ends up in our lap.
I just highlighted here the odd bedfellows, the strange Justice League that have joined on to this suit. A bunch of other board game companies and a clothing company, an art studio, a kitchen supply company, Mischief Toy Store, and 300 Below, a cryogenic processing company. What?
That's an odd collection. I did read a follow-up article on this that said the law firm has run out of people it can represent on this case. So like they've reached a limit. I don't know much about how these kind of lawsuits work. I don't know anything about law really, but I'm assuming that if you have more than so many, it has to go into what's called a class action suit, right? I don't know how all that works, but yeah. So apparently the law firm that's doing all this pro bono is like, we've got enough. We don't need any more. So apparently there was a whole bunch more companies that wanted to jump on this bandwagon. But clearly it's affecting small businesses and, small game companies.
I have a pet theory that I just developed that some paralegal let the cryogenic company sign on, and then somebody else was like, the heads and freezer guys are part of this. Like, all right, we have enough people on this case.
Yeah. Well, and then the other article, I think this is the one that you're showing now. Is this?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the Robotech folks. This is Catalyst Games, who make Robotech. If you're familiar with that brand, which is very popular strategy these days. Strategy is really popular strategy game these days. It started off as a strategy game. It's been a role-playing game. They made a Robotech role-playing game back in the day. I think some people still play that. Mech Warrior, is that the name I'm thinking of? But Robotech is a very popular game. I think back in 2023, people in the industry were basically saying Robotech is kind of the number 2, right? You got Games Workshop with Warhammer 40,000, and Robotech was like the number 2 most popular war game. So, Robotech is not, it's not a huge company, but they're not a tiny company. But this article is, if you want like a deep dive on how tariffs are really affecting these companies, this article explains with real numbers how their games are being affected by the tariffs.
I found this article very good. Look it up. I don't want to endorse anything on like a sketchy, on shaky ground, but look up this article on Catalyst for a very good, succinct breakdown of exactly how this works. And one major takeaway that I took from this, because I've been thinking about this for weeks now, but one thing that this article helped me see is that this hurts everybody across the board in pretty much every industry. But this hurts everybody in the gaming space. Any person watching this right now, like, you're going to have fewer options and they're going to be more expensive. The only people who benefit from this long term are the big fellas who can weather this storm. The person with tiny margins, barely keeping up with overhead, working one, pre-funded, crowd-funded project at a time, can't handle a 150% hike in costs of production. The person who can is the guy who's got shipping containers full of product already in a warehouse somewhere, and the budget to, maybe there's a bunch of layoffs, but Hasbro can lay off 100 people. The mom and pop shop with, mom and pop can't. If pop fires mom, that's it. It's over. You can't. That's not how any of this works. So if you like indie small games, if you like new ideas and creative energy coming into this field, you don't want a single monolithic corporation, whatever adjective you want to attach to it, being the only game in town and no longer under pressure to improve and innovate without any competition around. That's kind of what this recipe is gonna bake for us.
Yeah, and that's part of all this. Like, this is how we started talking about this last week. Was the CMON, Cool Mini or not? They had a big layoffs. That was the news last week that we talked about, and that's when I brought up the lawsuit thing and coming full circle back to Stonemaier today. But yeah, I mean, that's the big fear in all this, that we're going to drive the industry towards the bigger companies that are able to weather the storm, and after the storm's over, the smaller companies aren't going to be around anymore. And that's what's been great about the Kickstarter model. There's good things about Kickstarter, there's not so good things about Kickstarter. But the good thing about Kickstarter is it allows a small business to get their product out there, get the money up front, and then finish their product, right? And be able to deliver a product without a large investment of capital on the front end. Because the small businesses don't have large capital to invest on the front end. So Kickstarter allows small companies to do that and do it fairly successfully. But this whole tariff thing is, interrupting that process. And because games that have been ordered and paid for on Kickstarter are now it's time to deliver. And these tariffs didn't exist when people paid for these games. And now it comes time for the company to deliver, and they're really struggling. And that's part of the problem with Robotech is they've gone to Catalyst Games, Robotech, they've gone to an almost fully Kickstarter model. And so when you depend on that Kickstarter model, right, you're getting the money up front, which is usually a safer thing with a business. But now with tariffs driving, costs up, what they thought they were going to pay is far less than what they now have to pay to get these products out to people.
Yes, in that article he talks about we will fulfill for a loss, and that is a luxury that a lot of people can't afford to do. If you showed up to work on Monday and they're like, you know what, for a while you're gonna pay me. How long could you sustain that, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Catalyst Games is going to be paying people to play their newest versions of Robotech, right? That's the disaster in this, right? Because they took this Kickstarter money, they need to deliver on these Kickstarters, and they're not going to make a profit. So they're actually paying people to take these products, basically.
Yes, and this is, I mean, we are very blessed to have an international audience. Americans, I mean, it's our own damn fault in a lot of ways. Not mine, but we did it to ourselves. But yes, this is an international issue because a lot of these companies are US based. So if they're like, stop the presses, if I send this book, it might cost me $8 instead of earning me $3. Yeah, it's going to delay shipping. Also, the way logistics works in general, they want to fill a shipping container and then fill a ship with shipping containers. So if there is all of a sudden this glut of people canceling orders, then the shipping doesn't happen the same way. And if weather cancels your flight 3 hours before you get to the airport, that cancels your flight, and the next guy's got delays, and the next one. There's just ripples of consequences here. So yes, a lot of things are delayed just because of the uncertainty. A lot of people are placing bets. Look at the stock market. A lot of people are placing bets that this is all just going to go away, which I'm not hopeful for, but that would be great news.
Yeah. So we're let me say it this way. We are yet to realize all the unintended consequences of this, right? So there could be a lot more unintended consequences yet to be discovered. So with that said, let's not spend much more time on this because I'm guessing it's going to come up again next week and the following week. It's going to be in the news again because there's going to be more consequences to this tariff thing that are probably going to affect our gaming industry.
So everybody out there, support little guys in any way you can. My favorite littlest guy is us. How about that for a transition? There's a bunch. There's buttons on your screen, and pushing them helps us. We do appreciate all y'all, and in that spirit, you can just get this. This is on drive-through, and it's pretty dope. We set about and spent a lot of time and energy talking amongst ourselves about how to make like the minimum viable TTRPG engine that just gets out of the way, but packs a ton of flavor and has that progression mechanic. And I think I'm biased, but I think we did a pretty damn good job with You Dare. Art assets by one Mr. Wolf.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I actually played it last night with my players.
Nice.
So first time that You Dare got a full-on game that wasn't with us. And my players had a blast. It was a situation where like half of my regulars couldn't show up, and then a couple of my casuals showed up. So there wasn't like a need to continue with our D&D story arc. So we're like, let's do a one shot. And so I pulled up You Dare, pulled up some of the pre-generated character sheets, and we had a blast. I just asked them, I said, what genre do you want? And someone said sci-fi. I'm like, okay, what kind of sci-fi? And someone said sci-fi horror. And that's what we did. We did bugs on a spaceship. And and it was a blast. And it was interesting since we were doing horror and characters are so easy to make with You Dare that I didn't hesitate to kill off characters because we were doing the horror thing. So I started the game with the pre-generated characters to kind of show them how the game works, right? Because the pre-gen characters kind of help you see like how to make a character. But then when their characters died and we introduced a new character, I just handed them a completely blank character sheet. And they had no problems just creating a brand new character from scratch with a blank sheet after having played one from the sample sheet. So it worked even more smoothly than I expected it to. It was great.
I mean, again, I'm super biased, so I'm not going to talk about why I like You Dare, but I like the idea of having a You Dare in your back pocket. One, because it could save your game night when you're sitting there having that debate of like, ooh, are we going to continue without these people at the table. We're kind of at this pivotal moment. I don't want them to miss it. Maybe it's like a beat for that particular character, whatever the case is. You're not quite sure if you want to continue in your long running campaign, but like you sure want to sit around and have a good time with your people. Then having something so fast, rules light, that you can just hit the ground running. Okay, we don't have to spend 35 minutes on D&D Beyond making a character to enjoy the remaining 2 hours of game night. Boom, here you go. Here's a sheet. Hit the ground running. This guy's disposable. It takes you 30 seconds to make another one. That's near and dear to my heart of like, yes, this story might end for this character and you'll make a new one and we'll keep playing and it'll be fine. The other thing I think you dare is a Trojan horse to get your table of people who are very much resistant to start playing other games because of the level of effort it took them to gain a sense of competency with 5e. You slide something like this in front of them, just real quick. This is not the new thing. We're doing this tonight. We're doing this for a couple hours. Don't worry. It's not a big commitment. Hey, this is fun. Hey, there's things I like about something that isn't completely bogged down in crunch for some reasons some of the time. Oh, learning new games can be fun and easy. Mm-hmm. And oh boy, you get somebody to say that or realize that, we're in business. Now we're playing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, my current group, we did it with Eldritch Hack, Professor Dungeon Masters, Eldritch Hack. This was probably like 3 or 4 Halloweens ago. I did a Halloween one-shot using Eldritch Hack. And it was, for my players, it was the first time they had played something that wasn't D&D. And Eldritch Hack was super fast and easy to learn. And like, this trying a new game isn't hard. Like, that was like the reaction they had. And it's been great ever since because we played a lot of different games since that time. So yeah, finding like, whether you use UDare or Eldritch Hack or whatever rules light system you want to introduce your players to, highly recommend getting an easy rule system in your back pocket for whenever you want to do a one shot or whenever like half your players don't show up.
And while I would never publicly endorse any illicit substance or anything, it's I'm gonna embrace the metaphor because it's a proven model. This is a great question. I'm in charge. I'm calling it an audible. What's everyone's typical session length? 4 hours was our typical. I actually have a 4-hour game and a 2-hour game, and the difference is palpable most of the time. But if you're doing it right, they almost feel that both of them are zero time at all once we are in the group. But it is very curious. Like, this is a one shot. Cool. So this is 2 hours or 8 hours? Because I don't know what one session is for you. So yeah, chat. Where are we here as far as your typical session length? Brad, what are you working with over there?
We have a 3-hour block every Thursday night, but of course, you spend the first 20 or 30 minutes, bullshitting and trying to get everybody settled. There's always somebody that forgets to level up before they show up. And, so we end up like actual game time about 2.5 hours, which is short for my standards. Like I used to be like a 4-hour block kind of person. But it has kind of pressured me as a DM to be more efficient and more streamlined. And then I run games for kids at my wife's school, and those are like 90-minute blocks, right? So those are super short. But I'm using a very rules light, stripped down version of D&D, because the kids want D&D, so they want it to have all the components of D&D. But I've got it boiled down to a very simple version of it, and so I can run like a 4 encounter session in 90 minutes with the kids.
Hey, everyone at home, even if it's not children, if you're running D&D, if you're running a game for people, you can just say it's D&D, because out of the gate there's 7 official versions of that and like a galaxy of things that are D&D. I've been having this conversation a lot lately. D&D is a name like Kleenex. It's a huge umbrella term. And yeah, a lot of people are none the wiser or don't care. Like, no, I want to play 5th edition. It's like, okay, how about a 5th edition with my binder full of homebrew rules? Oh yeah, that's cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, I call it Shadow Dark. So yeah, there's different ways to get there. Speaking of D&D adjacent slash in the umbrella, more cool stuff happening on D&D Beyond, which I'm on record as having mixed feelings about. But I also have mixed feelings about the fact that I've been saying Symbaroum incorrectly for at least 2 years now. Symbaroum sounds much more natural to me, but I am not a Nordic death metal vibes guy. Do you have any experience with this? Have you cracked the spine on any of the Symbaroum books?
I read the core rules. A couple of years, I think, when it first came out. I read the core rules because it's actually in one of my 10 different ways to play D&D videos from like when I first started this channel, and I really like it. Like reading the book, I like the setting. I like the changes they made to the 5th edition rule set to fit the setting. If I was to start from scratch, if I had never played 5th edition before, but I wanted to play 5th edition, this would probably be the version I'd start with, because I like the dark forest setting, and I like the deadlier, grittier additions that they made to the 5th edition rule set.
Yeah, if you're not familiar, Symbaroum is your ancient fallen magical empire that they did something and it was bad and an apocalyptic thing happened, and you're a desperate adventurer. Maybe you're trying to get out of the kingdom that has colonized your lands. Maybe you're just tired of eking out a living, scratching the earth for turnips, and you want bigger and better things. So you venture into this dark forest and it sticks to you. There's a very cool like corruption mechanic. Your shadow is slowly being tainted by all of the experiences you have, all of the heinous acts you commit in the course of your adventures. I like a game where yes, I want an RPG giving me progression. I want my character to get better and better at things too. But I really prefer, and it's so infrequent, that there is an end point coming and maybe I can see it coming closer to me or me approaching it, or potentially both is my preference. But good stories have endings.
Mm-hmm.
And so few TTRPGs these days, or at least in the D&D sphere, account for that in any real way.
Yeah, the Symbaroum gives me Morkborg vibes, right? Like Morkborg has that same similar, like the end is nigh setting to it, right? The idea is we are not going to survive the end of this campaign. There's like that darkness to it. Of course, Symbaroum, the version we just showed that's now available on D&D Beyond, of course, is the 5th edition version. But it's the original Symbaroum game, or Symbaroum, am I saying it right? The original game was it's made by Free League, so it uses Free League's design system, but then they made a 5th edition version as well, and it's the 5th edition version that's available on D&D Beyond.
And what's going on in these Nordic countries, which are claimed to be the happiest place on earth by a lot of scientific measures that I lend some weight to, but like, is it just that it gets dark for a very long time? Because like, it's spooky. there's dark stuff coming out of them again and again, and I love it. I'm not complaining. I'm just curious of the cause here. The other Hasbro D&D news worth talking about is like an undead creature rising from a grave. Sigil is still a thing that's getting updates. Maybe we're pretending that we didn't cancel this. I am so confused, and I did some homework, and I'm still like pretty confused. Brad, what do you feel about all of this?
I mean, I didn't have any real interest in Sigil from the onset because I don't really play online. But so I don't have a dog in this fight. And part of me, as somebody who likes Dungeons and Dragons, having grown up with it, I just want WotC to do well so that Dungeons and Dragons stays cool. That's all I want. So I get really frustrated when WotC does dumb stuff. But this, like, they're releasing updates, and the articles that come with the updates are acting like this is a fully operational software system. And guess what? Here's the new thing. It's not we're adding to our it doesn't make sense to me because it's like we know it's not a complete version of what it was supposed to be. We know it's incomplete. So I don't know how they're trying to spin these updates as a cool new thing when all they're doing is slowly fixing the product that wasn't finished. Because we know it wasn't finished. We know that the design team was mostly fired, and there's only a handful of people, cobbling bits and pieces of it together. I don't know. What's the best case scenario? The best case scenario is that the small handful of people over the course of the next couple of years finally do what the design team was supposed to do by now. I don't know. It just seems weird.
It seems, and the big news is that now with Control Z, like that is the big update here. There's an undo feature. It's all just very confusing to me. Like, yeah, I don't really care. I'm kind of happy that Sigil isn't going to work out because I was afraid of it. But like this again and again and again makes me so. I don't know, man. I don't understand, and I wish I did because a healthy D&D is good for the community. It sucks all the oxygen out of the room in a way. So like a D&D on the ropes is maybe a good thing for the community, but like, man, just make cool stuff and bring in new people who are then going to experiment with other cool games and stop. I don't know, man. Don't try to gaslight me either. Like this one felt offensive. It's like, wait, come on. I'm not a goldfish. I remember what happened 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Just 3 weeks ago, you'd fired everybody and told us that we're just going to release it as is, even though it's not complete. And now you're acting like these updates are a cool new thing. Yeah.
On the bright side, I guess, of WotC news, depending on how you feel about WotC, they're doing fine. There was a lot of doom and gloom about how 5.5 failed, which I was always suspicious of because I was sitting at a table with people who bought all of the books. Everybody I know bought the new core because people really like D&D. They just don't go yell about it on the internet all the time. So I am not surprised that Hasbro had a very good quarter, and the bulk of it is coming from Wizards of the Coast. I did write down, and they lost some money because they keep abandoning projects. They invested in shows and movies, and those are never going to see the light of day. And still, they had a good quarter, and it's mostly because of WotC. So they're, like it or not, Hasbro isn't going anywhere for a while, and they will weather this weird storm that is coming.
Well, one thing that I noticed in here is they attributed the profits to Baldur's Gate 3. So they're still making money off of Baldur's Gate 3. They're Magic the Gathering, and Monopoly Go. So Monopoly Go is obviously a Hasbro product, but I didn't realize that Monopoly Go falls under the WotC umbrella because it's part of the digital side of WotC. I thought that was interesting, and that's might be a way to kind of pad the numbers a little bit. Because we know Monopoly Go made a ton of money when it first came out. So is Monopoly Go kind of holding D&D's hand in helping it be profitable?
And I'm okay with that. I feel a lot of the troubles that we are still experiencing the aftermath of, and the infinite stepping on rakeness of it all, does feel like it started when investors figured out that D&D actually made money. Things changed after that. Um, Late breaking news, people. Ascending spell from Faye Muncie. Jim, I am curious about your take. It's done. We settled it, but I want to know because I'm hoping you're wrong, so I can dunk on you. No, I don't care. I am very curious at Jim's take on that. Thanks for coming in.
But yeah, but I do want to point out that we made it 30 minutes into the show without talking about WotC. And the first thing WotC related we talked about was a third-party publisher's content on D&D Beyond. So we made it like a good 35 minutes without talking about WotC proper. I'm proud of that. Even though a chunk of that was talking about tariffs, which I also don't want to talk about.
Hey, everybody, like, we're trying. That wasn't an accident. We're doing our best. We're doing our best. Our friend Jim hits the nail on the head here. Say what you will about Faye Muncie. They don't have the heart. Morale checks. That's where I'm still hanging my hat.
So the next kind of topic on our agenda is, kind of still in the talking about WotC and kind of connecting the dots between WotC and our earlier topic about tariffs, is the question of like, what does all this mean for our local game stores, right? And that's what you were alluding to earlier, Ryan, when you were talking about like this tariff thing. It really sets up the big companies, who can weather the storm to kind of come out on top after the little companies fall by the wayside, right? And so I've been paying attention to this YouTube channel, Lords of War Games and Hobbies. If you guys are familiar with this, they're a Canadian they own a hobby store in Canada. The two guys, and they get on YouTube and they talk shop. They talk what it's like to own a local game store. And they're largely focused on the wargaming side of it because they both used to work for Games Workshop back in the day. So they've got a lot of insight on the industry, and it's an interesting watch to hear them talk about, hobby stores and what it's like to try to stay open as a small local game store. But that got me kind of looking into, this whole, the impact of the tariff thing and, WotC, because WotC in that article we just talked about, where they were talking about their profits for the first quarter of this year, they talked about how they're kind of tariff resistant because Magic the Gathering, in large part, at least a big chunk of Magic the Gathering is printed here in the United States. And Wizards of the Coast, of course, D&D is doing a lot of their sales online nowadays with D&D Beyond. So, WotC is kind of telling their shareholders that they're going to be fine, that they're not going to be they're not going to be dramatically affected by all the tariff stuff. And that kind of led me down a rabbit hole of looking into other gaming companies that seem to be kind of tariff resistant. And I kind of put together a list. It's a very short list for what I can find. But I tried to do some homework on this. Pokemon is largely printed in Belgium and Japan. Disney Lorcana is made in the US and in Europe. And their cards are printed on paper that comes from the UK. That's a UK paper company that they print their stuff on, which I thought was interesting. And then, of course, there's Asmodee, which they're a big gaming company. They're like the gaming juggernaut. They own, you've probably not heard of Asmodee, but you've probably heard of Games of Wonder, Catan Studios, Fantasy Flight Games, Atomic Mass Games. So all of those companies are owned by Asmodee. So that's 4 companies. Games Workshop. Did I mention Games Workshop? Games Workshop's one of the other ones. They've issued a statement that just kind of implied that they're just eating the cost of tariffs right now. But they apparently have the capital to do that. They're just taking losses on their products that they're shipping to the U.S. right now. Plus, the tariffs between the U.K. and the U.S. aren't as high as the ones between China and the U.S. And Games Workshop makes a lot of their own stuff. They don't resource it out to China and the other countries out that in Asia. So we basically got like 4 companies we're looking at that could really weather this whole tariff thing well. Games Workshop, Pokemon, Disney, and Asmodee, right? And that kind of circles back around to what you were saying earlier, Ryan, is that it could get to the point that our local game stores don't have nearly as much diversity in games to offer, right? Because we can very well end up with like 4 or 5 game companies, Hasbro being another one, right? Hasbro, WotC. So we're really looking at like 5 game companies worth of content that would be affordable for your local game store to carry.
Which is nuts, and I hate it. And as much as we talk about all the bad news that's going on all the time, because it keeps sucking us back in, we are in a golden age, my friends, and we do have some influence in protecting it and keeping it thriving. That's my dog going insane because someone rang my doorbell. If you heard that, viewers at home, that's Dolly going insane. There are so many cool, creative people pouring their hearts and their souls and their blood, sweat, and tears into cool games. And you have some influence out there about whether or not they have the ability to continue to do that. So every dollar is a vote. Buying a thing on Amazon might be convenient. Buying it from your local game shop might cost a little bit more, and whatever. There's privilege involved in mobility and just proximity to a local game shop. I know not everybody can get to one, but if you can, go hang out. Spend $5 on a table fee. Buy a can of soda, right? They're making more money on that anyway. These are community centers in a time and a space where like third places are dying. There's the bar, right? If you want to drink, which is a whole can of worms we don't need to open. And that's it, right? Like your local library, but like shush, quiet. No, we can't scream about orcs and stuff. So the game shop, go there, help them stay put. Because I'm down at mine every week, and it's a blast. And I've learned a lot, seen a lot of cool stuff, met a lot of cool people, had a lot of cool conversations. It's a very valuable resource that is very easy to take for granted. And it ain't easy to be a brick and mortar store today, period. before all of this, before factoring in a very niche hobby with like not amazing margins, and then gestures at everything in the political climate today. So if you can, go buy a bottle of water at your game shop and talk shop for a little bit with them.
Yeah. We actually found a creative way to support our local game store beyond what we normally do, because one of my kids loves Pokemon. So we had his birthday. We rented the game, like one of the gaming spaces at the local game store, to host his Pokemon themed birthday party. So instead of spending that money going to like some kid's place, we don't have Chuck E. Cheese anymore. Do those even still exist?
I don't know.
But we spent that money at our local game store by renting a room for our son's birthday. So there's all sorts of creative ways you can support your local game store.
Okay. I think I was just talking about how we're in the midst of a golden age, and I think two people who get credit for starting and continuing that, like I place a lot of hope and respect on these fellas here they had a conversation. All I was firing off a lot of cool ideas. Oftentimes that's what I'm looking for in a YouTube video, in internet content. It's not, yeah, cool, give me cool stuff, but also make me come up with my own cool stuff. I try to package that into the vertical table a lot of the time. I don't mixed success, I would say. But this was a very interesting talk. You know who Matt Colville is, and I bet you know Quinn's too. But Quinn's is newer on the scene relatively. He's huge already. But the TTRPG foray is only a year old. He dabbled a little bit in his previous life as a board game commentator. But these guys sit down and have like an hour-long conversation. It's mostly Colville being a bad interviewer, if I'm going to be honest. He brings streamer energy. There's an impulse to not let the other guy talk because you got to fill all the space because you got to entertain the people. And like, look, I'm doing things and I can't let dead air happen. So he asks elaborate questions and then answers them himself a lot of the times. Love you, Matt, but that's what happened. But yeah,
Matt is great at being a talking head because he's very entertaining and an eloquent speaker and can talk very fast, but that does not also translate into being a great interviewer, right? Yeah, so it's kind of a wild video. It's wildly entertaining, but in the classic, this is an interview sense. It's not like a great interview, but the energy that they have and the ideas that they spiral off of each other, it's a fun watch for sure.
One banger of a quote. I have a whole list of stuff. I could talk about this for 90 minutes, but when you play a role-playing game, you're not getting married. It's all right to like play the field, date around, you know? You don't have to. I feel like there's a lot of people who are in a monogamous relationship with 5th edition, which, you know, respect, but like, I don't know. Have you ever spoken to another game? There's some cool stuff out there. There's more cool games out there, and you might learn something and bring it back with you.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm with Matt on this. Like this whole like game monogamy idea, right? Which I think is a funny metaphor. You know, where people get like kind of married to this as their game of choice, right? Whether it's 5th edition or Pathfinder or, you know, whatever your kind of chosen RPG is. That's foreign to me because like Matt, I grew up in the 80s and we played different games all the time. We bounced back and forth between D&D and Marvel Superheroes and Top Secret SI, and then we would splash in like some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Paranoia, and then we mixed in strategy games like Axis and Allies, and I think Fortress USA was the sci-fi version of Axis and Allies. So we played all sorts of games when we were kids. The idea that you had to pick one RPG and that was your RPG of choice, totally foreign to me. But Matt points out that, like, yeah, we've kind of raised almost 2 generations of people now on this brand loyalty to your RPG. I think it kind of started with, I don't know, maybe it started with 2nd edition. I feel like it started with 3rd edition and Pathfinder and then 5th edition. Like, I feel like those are kind of the big brand loyalty games out there. I don't know. What do you think, Ryan?
I don't have a pet theory as to why. I think there might be like greater cultural forces at play, right? This might be like corporate capture or marketing or some other like top-down force. But I do have a hypothesis that as systems got weightier, as new people came in, the degree of effort that it would take to get into one game, they would project that again, right? If you have only played one game and it's fairly rules heavy, and we can get into the nuance of exactly how crunchy 5e is, but it is definitely on the crunchier end of the spectrum unless you are looking back from Pathfinder's lofty viewpoint. I think you assume, if you don't have the experience, that the next game you pick up is going to require the same amount of effort. And we've talked about this before. Like you do gain a proficiency in learning new games. Like it gets easier. You're carrying a lot of that knowledge with you. You know a lot of the precepts going into whatever game. It's a translatable skill. Two, most games are easier to lift and easier to run game masters. This is why the game master breaks first, I think, in a lot of these social circles, is that there is a lot of weight to carry as the dungeon master at a 5e table that gets in the way of the person putting in the most work and time and efforts fun. And that problem has been addressed again and again in a lot of very cool, interesting ways in a lot of other places. And I think ultimately a lot of people are actually like doing a pick and mix and making their own things. Like whatever I'm doing, I have a legacy of 5e in my brain I'm bringing with me. I have a lot of old school tricks in the bag, a lot of weird stuff I've picked up along the way, just even like reading books I haven't played that I will implement at the table, and like the players might not even know half the time, but it's made my life as a game master so much better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you know, I can't click on the buttons anymore with our new setup. So
Oh, what do you? I'll click buttons for you. What do you mean?
I can't show Nacho's comment, but Nacho's comment, you know, talks about getting away from D&D Beyond app and using pencil and paper at the table, and that to me is like that's role playing. I while I recognize the convenience of apps, you know, for playing the crunchier games, like you're saying, Ryan, when we play the more streamlined games, when the character sheet is just one piece of paper and you got a pencil and your dice, I feel like the game flows much better. So I agree with Nacho on that point, and I agree with your point that the learning curve for 5th edition and Pathfinder 3rd edition, the learning curve for those games was so steep that I think it does give that false impression that role-playing games are hard to learn, that changing to a new system is difficult. And that's another point that Quinn and Matt talked about in their video. We've talked about it before here. I think the reality is if you want to introduce your players to something that's not Dungeons and Dragons, you know, pick up a rules light, fast, easy to learn game and show your players that it's not hard to pick up a new game. You know, like I don't recommend switching from like D&D to GURPS, you know. Don't give yourself that much work. Like switch to something that's, you know, easy to learn, right? Like Tiny Dungeons or Easy D6 or, you know, Eldritch Hack or You Dare.
I was going to say it if you didn't.
You know, monster of the week, right? You know, there is some crunch to the Powered by the Apocalypse games, but there's also the way Powered by the Apocalypse games work with their playbooks. Like all the rules you need really are on your character sheet. So I find Powered by the Apocalypse games pretty easy to teach.
It occurs to me that this is an insightful comment, and this kind of dovetails with what you were just saying as well. Of there's like an ecosystem in D&D, which is smart from a business standpoint. Of if I get you on D&D Beyond, then you're used to it. You're reluctant to get off of that. And if I never give you the opportunity to finish a campaign, and I was just talking about how I like a good stories end, and I find it unsatisfying that D&D is built to fizzle out. But if I don't have that satisfying conclusion, then I don't have that moment to look around and think about what's next, because maybe that'll give me the opportunity to do something that's not D&D, and maybe D&D is built that way on purpose. Maybe the reason that it's 20 levels on the box instead of the 10 to 14 we're all actually using is because it keeps that door open. One day, I'm going to reach level 20. Until I do, I'm not finished here. It doesn't matter if the system breaks down.
Well, and that was one of the interesting things about Matt and Quinn's discussion is they talked about games that were designed to end, right? I forget the name of the main one they were talking about where like the
Heart. I think that was part of Heart is like, oh,
Heart,
so good, so cool, such a great. Sorry, I will
yeah.
gush about that for 20 minutes. That's not on the agenda.
But yeah, Heart was one of the ones, but then the other one, the one from the 80s, the one where like
the weird, yeah, oh god,
yeah,
Skylands of
something
somewhere.
It's got the long name that I can never remember. I never played it. I like they mentioned in the video, I remember seeing ads for it in Dragon Magazine as a kid, but we never played it. But like they were describing how like in that game, like the world building premise is that you're lower class and you're trying to achieve upper class status, and the way to achieve it is by getting signatures. So the game is designed to end once your character fights their way, sometimes literally fights their way from lower class to upper class in this, medieval fantasy society, which is an interesting premise for a game. But it, like what they were talking about from a game design standpoint, is it builds in the idea that this campaign is finite. It's going to end. It's not going to be this ongoing thing that we're never really sure when to call it quits. But I hadn't thought about what you just said, Ryan. D&D being the opposite of that isn't just possibly bad game design. It's probably, whether intentional or not, it has the marketing side effect of keeping people hooked on this particular game, because there's definitely a sense that you kind of never finish D&D. Right? You might finish a campaign, but by the time you finish a campaign, there's a new book out, somebody has a new idea, and you're already got the next campaign ready to go, right? And because of the lack of specific game design towards ending the story, because D&D doesn't have any mechanic like that built in, I think a lot of campaigns can kind of end in kind of a fizzle out kind of way, kind of an anticlimactic way. But that might leave you wanting more. Kind of like when you eat a Twinkie, and the first one tastes really good, and then you shouldn't have the second one, but you do anyway. But the second one's never as good as the first because it's way too much sugar at this point. And then you get caught in this kind of vicious cycle. As I wanted to taste as good as the first Twinkie, and now I'm on my fourth one and I feel sick. Like
chasing the dragon.
Is that what D&D is?
Is that what D&D is? Baby. Speaking of dragons, hey everybody, did you have a good Dragon Week? I had an awesome Dragon Week. Brad, did you have a good Dragon Week?
I love Dragon Week. It was fun.
Antonio Pointy Hat put together this Monster Week Wrapped. And again, now this is old news now, because I don't know. Nairobi was late to the party because she put together like incredible art, nuts. But hers came out on Monday. I don't know I think it might be 218 videos and more minutes of content, and then therefore we will have more views by now. But like, man, what a cool thing! What an awesome achievement! I just love this place. As much as we complain and talk about the things that we don't like around here, that's because we love it here. And like this community is vibrant. And this isn't everybody, right? There's a bunch of cool, interesting people who are like, no, thank you, I don't want to talk about 5e. And not that Dragon Week was necessarily just a 5e silo, but dang, this was a cool one. This was a cool one. We talked about our highlights last time. I would love comments in chat to give me like what I didn't watch all 217. I'll admit it. Sorry guys, I did my best. I watched a lot of them. Oh boy, did I watch a lot of them. And there was some awesome stuff. And now, speaking of finishing and starting a new thing, where do we go from here? Monster Week is an annual event now, like it or not. Jenny D and Pointy Hat can roll it up and walk away, and like we'll still make it happen. It won't be nearly as good without them, guys. Please stay. But
not that they're considering that. That's just
no, because they love it. Because guys, this benefits smaller creators way more than them. And I think people who haven't run, not even a YouTube, like running a YouTube channel, yeah, that's what they're doing. But also like a community event, like this is a wedding. They are putting on a wedding level of organization for kicks. They're losing time on other tasks. I imagine sleep, peace of mind. This is a love letter to the community that they're doing. So yes, thank them. Let them know that you enjoy it and appreciate it. And what are we doing next year, guys?
Yeah. Well, apparently now I have to go watch Salty Nick's Tavern video because he just didn't make the playlist. So I'll find that and watch it. Give you at least a view and a like there.
You didn't make. Oh, because Salty Nick, you made like 7 of them, right?
Yeah, so whatever.
Salty Nick did a D30 for a dragon, which I think is a brilliant idea. But yeah, there's multiple videos, so sorry you didn't make them all on there.
But yeah, so Brian and I were talking about this offline, and like there's like if we're trying to pick a monster for Monster Week, like there's good monsters out there. Like there's good design that goes into the Otyugh, for example, is it's a fun monster to play. Every time I play the Otyugh, I set my goal to be able to pick up 2 player characters at once and slam them into each other, because the monster specifically has that ability, but it's really hard to accomplish that in 3 rounds of combat, and the Otyugh always dies by the 3rd round of combat. So that's my personal challenge to myself every time I run an Otyugh is, can I bash 2 player characters together? I've only done it once in 10 years of running 5e. But
question: do you tell do your players know that's the goal?
No, because that would make it even harder.
Oh, but they feel it. I always, yeah, I'll not always, but I will occasionally project like the Otyugh is it's good as like it wants to do, like you see in its eye, in its weird eye that it has a plan. This is what it's going to do to you. You see it coming, and then that like because especially if it's not going to pay off, I get some of the juice out of it. It's like this thing wants to swallow you. You better break this grapple.
But yeah, the Otyugh is an example of a good monster design, but you can't do a monster of the week on Otyughs, right? Because it's a fun monster, it's got cool design to it, but it's not something that you can build a campaign around. It's not a big bad that you're going to have for 10 levels of a campaign. So what's a good big bad that could really lend itself to a monster of the week? So it looks like in the chat, the first one we got here is the Lithids.
Can't go wrong. Baldur's Gate did it.
Yep. And you might even be able to broaden that out, right? To just aberrations in general, right? Then you got all sorts of Lovecraftian horror ideas. I think that could be a good one because the Mind Flayer itself is specific D&D licensed property. So, and
it's sketchy because it's like Cthulhu guy. But yes, creators out there, don't touch Mind Flayers unless you're working on the DM's Guild because you'll get in trouble.
Oozes would be an interesting one because like there's not an obvious like Ooze as a bad guy story, right? So you'd have to flex your creative muscles to build stories with like Oozes as the main villain, right? But that could be interesting.
I don't know. I would watch 100 Otyugh videos, but like I might watch 100 Ooze videos. Phil's just listing every monster now. Oh, okay. You're demonstrating the idea of like universality because you want it to be other games. See, Mimic is a very cool one, but I'd watch 15 videos about mimics. So should we tell them what we landed on? Not that we have any authority over Monster Week, but
yeah, we can definitely tell them. I'm still thinking about like devils and demons. That could definitely be a theme, like a blood war, because you could talk about the blood war with devils and demons. If you did devils, demons, and angels, right now we're talking about level extra planar conflicts. That could be interesting. Yeah, you could do liches, would be another one. That could be cool. But go ahead, Ryan. What was our pitch?
I was surprised that we actually didn't hear it in the comments. I'm disappointed in you. No, actually, no, I'm kidding. But we landed on hags yesterday, and I stand by that this morning. Especially now that we have a CR20 stat block. But to Phil's point, we have a ton of adaptability. Think of a fairy tale. Think of another one. The big bad in at least one, probably two of them, is hag coded, if not exactly a hag.
Yeah, hag or witch, right? Witches and hags. Yeah, I actually did a video recently on witches and hags, and I was really proud of it. Unfortunately, it hasn't broken 500 views yet, so I was kind of disappointed. But yeah, I love the evil witch, evil hag as a villain. I think there's just so much you can do there. And you can also incorporate, my players tend to enjoy kind of the metaphor, right? Of like when our D&D game starts to kind of mirror the real world a little bit. I think it's cathartic for them when my bad guy seems a little too close to some of the things that's going on in the real world, right? So I feel like with hags and witches, you can challenge a lot of tropes and ideas about the ideas about the patriarchy, right? And different negative themes that are often throughout our history have been directed at women. You can take some of those and kind of turn them on their head and actually make interesting stories. If your players are up for that kind of thing. Some players are more just beer and pretzels that just point me at the bad guy so I can bash them. But I like making villains that have layers to them and have motivations, and the players can kind of learn their motivations and wait a second, are they really the bad guy in this situation, right? And then they have that choice. Is this person really the bad guy, or is that person really the bad guy? And it's up to them to figure out who is the big bad and who are they going to declare the villain of this story, right? That's kind of instrumental in my game design. That I don't decide who the villain is at the beginning of a campaign. I create NPCs that have, darker motives, but it's kind of up to my players to identify and figure out who they think the villain is. And then that, once they determine that kind of brings the story towards a conclusion. Twin Steel.
Yeah, I am guilty of this. It just kind of I fall into this pattern a lot, and I know I'm not the only one. Brad, I like what you're saying a lot. I do endeavor. I often know who the big bad is, and I'll have multiple ones, and the players have some decision about which plot line they're engaging with or whatever. And I do try to keep my NPCs neutral, but keeping the big bad in a quantum state is so cool to me, because the players will do that work for you if you give them the room to do it. Yeah, I love that a lot. And you can do a lot with a hag, one on the allegorical level. Hey y'all, all those witches that they burned? Those were just women. There weren't any witches. They were just burning women. So first of all, yeah, that's rich ground to cultivate. On the other side, a hag in D&D terms is someone with a lot of illusory power, charm ability and a lot of brain and motivation to use subterfuge and deception. So you might be dealing with the machinations of a hag for a long time before you even figure it out. Um, I'm also with Will on this one. I also think that hags got a raw deal and should be cooler, and that's another reason why I want 200 some odd awesome people to make their own versions of hags.
100%. The new arch hag, I think, finally does a hag justice, and that was part of my video. I like the new arch hag because it finally gives me that wicked witch villain that, like, I feel has been absent from all of fifth edition. So that is one of the things I like about the new monster manual specifically is that new arch hag stat block. I think it makes for a good campaign level big bad.
Yeah, there's just so much good stuff. The cool minions, cool atmospheric stuff like Baba Yaga's hut standing up on the chicken legs for the first time and your party being like, I am delighted and terrified. I don't know what's happening right now. But like, is the outhouse also going to stand up on on legs? Because that's much scarier. There's just so much you can do with it. Making it fey coded, or you just mentioned the Wicked Witch. Like, I don't know. I could cook up a whole Wizard of Oz. Wicked is so hot right now. I would fear a couple of my players may burst into song way more often than I'm comfortable with. So maybe I wouldn't go that route. But there's a lot of goodness there. I love a good hag story.
Yeah, I think hags would be great. That's my suggestion, or our suggestion. We talked about it yesterday. It's our suggestion for the next monster of the week. But yeah, I ultimately, just to kind of wrap all this up, I think what I love about this YouTube community is this what we do on Casual Fridays. The fact that most of the people in chat here are other creators, and we're able to talk about the hobby from the business side, from the game design side, and then also just have fun talking about the games we love. And it's a really fantastic community to be a part of. Getting to know so many of you over the last year and a half has been a blast. Really enjoy it.
Yeah, I would echo that 1,000%. Like, I like it here. Like, yeah, we talk about the business side of things, but like, no one's, at least the people that we're rubbing shoulders with, like, yeah, people need money, but if the main goal was to make money, we wouldn't be doing it here in the TTRPG minds. There's more profitable places to go. It's just cool and it is fun, and that's the point. And especially on the internet, sometimes it can be easy to lose sight of that. And things like Monster Week and hopefully Casual Friday is a reminder of that. Like, yeah, let's just hang out and talk about the cool stuff that we like, and maybe even make some cool stuff ourselves. We were gonna do a whole bunch of that, but we're running out of time. Brad, do we want to throw out some cool ideas real quick about how to make hags or big bads even cooler? The floor is yours. You have 3 minutes.
Well, my first tip is what you said earlier, Ryan. Build up to the hag, right? Like you did in your dragon foreshadowing video, right? The idea of like foreshadow your villain ahead of time. Let the players see how miserable the townspeople are. Let them see how the deals that this hag has made with people has affected their life. You find these people who are cursed, or find these people who got the thing that they always wanted, but that thing is like somehow a monkey's paw, and now their life is ruined, right? So as they meet NPCs along the way, you're foreshadowing that there's this fey influence, or this witch influence that is really just spoiling everybody's life, right? So, and then that starts to affect the players, because when they come to town, they want to have fun in the tavern because they just and spend all their dungeon money. But like nobody in town wants to drink with them. Nobody in town wants to celebrate with them because they're all miserable thanks to this hag, right? Or whatever it is. Like you find ways to foreshadow the hag ahead of time, and then whatever level of hag you're using, don't rely simply on the 5e stat blocks, because with the exception of the arch hag, the 5e hag stat blocks suck. The give your hag layer actions, give your hag cool minion interactions, steal that ability. I love the ability from the goblin boss, where like the goblin boss can just grab another goblin and intercept your attack.
It's so cinematic. It's perfect. It's like, nope, like human shield. It's like the most evil thing you can do, and it's tactically brilliant. And the player's gonna be like, they can't do that. Like, what?
Yeah,
they just did.
If you need a low level wicked witch boss for like a 3rd level game, take the green hag and give it that goblin boss ability to shield herself with a minion.
I cast shield and they just throw a goblin at you.
Yeah, or give your hag layer actions, right? This hag's been influencing this forest for longer than you've been alive. This forest does things when the hag wants it to do things. And what does that forest do? How can you use that forest against the players when they come into the hag's realm, right? You've got to find game mechanics that support the theme of this tricky, manipulative, beguiling creature, right?
Somewhere in my early D&D, like Dungeon Master career, I realized that I had built this like mental wall between monster and NPC. And by making that wall at least permeable, if not removing it entirely, made my bad guys way more interesting. There's a lot of monsters in the monster manual, and I'm not saying this is good, but they are built to talk to and not fight. And if it's got a stat block, the players can kill it. And if you want it to talk for a while, you should give it enough resources to stay alive to finish the conversation. That's another point. But the players should be dealing with the hag or whatever the big bad is. This was carried over from the Dragon Week video that you and a bunch of other cool people helped put together with me. Put them in front of the players earlier. A lot more interactions. The big bad of the movie, unless it's like a weird slasher horror monster flick, like is there very early. Hans Gruber's great because he's in the best scenes the whole way through. They don't save him for the end. I wouldn't care if he fell off the building if I just got to know him in those last 5 minutes. Put especially a creature like a hag through deception, disguised, be careful with the Scooby-Doo trope that's overwrought, but otherwise, like, things are weird here, and this old lady is like prophesying doom, and she's the bad person the whole time, and is rubbing it in the characters' faces, and they kind of like her at the same time.
Yeah,
you can achieve that, you're gonna do well.
If you want a good hag character to kind of model your hag off of, watch Stardust. Michelle Pfeiffer's character in Stardust is the quintessential hag. She shows up early and often, and the main characters encounter her multiple times, right? Or they see the influence of her multiple times before they actually face off against her. And she literally is like the quintessential hag, right? She needs to make herself look young and beautiful, but underneath she's like this hideous old creature. And it's like all the things right there. Great role model for an NPC hag or witch. Michelle Pfeiffer's character in that movie is great. As far as specific design, look at the layer actions and the legendary actions of other monsters, and find the one that fits the theme you want for your hag or witch, right? So like take the Mummy Lord stat block. If you want a hag with weather powers, you can take the Mummy Lord's legendary actions. It doesn't have to be like dusty desert theme, but the mechanics of those work really well for any weathered theme um, uh, legendary actions. So if you want like a much higher level, um, uh, sea hag? You want a much higher level sea hag? Uh, Take a look at the Mummy Lord stat block. If you want like a weather witch kind of Ursula from the Little Mermaid themed, you can borrow the mechanics from the Mummy Lord and turn them into sea and storm powers. Um, Doing stuff like that. Take your legendary actions from, if you want like a really nasty night hag, take your legendary actions from the Lich, right, to make a really cool spellcaster, Maleficent style, night hag witch style character. But yeah, beg, borrow, and steal from the monsters that actually have good mechanics and slap them on your hag stat blocks, basically.
I am a huge fan of reskinning, right? Like homebrew is great, but if you can't get it because you don't have time, because this hag fight was supposed to happen a month from now or whatever, store bought is fine. Like throw a spell that like insect plague or like throw fireball, put fireball down, draw the circle, deck save this much damage, but it is a swarm of locusts. It is this pulsating ball of eldritch energy. It is this viscous goo that smells terrible and feels worse when it splatters all over you. And you don't ask me what it is. You don't want to know, and it's just fireball, right? The numbers, the mechanics of it are just an engine running under the imaginative narrative part. And that's the part where if you don't have a ton of energy to work on everything, I would suggest putting your focus on. You can reskin anything, as you're saying. It doesn't, if it's not a sandstorm, it's a squall. This is a sea hag now. Let's go.
Right. Yeah, or Burhag, right? It could be a blizzard. Same mechanic, but it's a blizzard instead of a dust storm, right? The but what you're saying about this taking the mechanics of a spell effect and reflavoring it or leveling it up, right? That's exactly what they did with the Archhag. One of the Archhag's abilities, right, is that lightning ability that it has, which is basically a monstrous upgrade to Witch Bolt, right? The mechanics of that are very similar to Witch Bolt. They just upgraded it, and basically you can, in addition to the actual attack action, you can damage anybody that's been cursed by the hag with it. It's very similar mechanics to the actual Witch Bolt spell. They just dialed it up and made it flavor specific. So that's a good example of what Ryan just said, how you can take an existing spell mechanic and reflavor it into a legendary action or a layer action, or a monster ability.
I love it. I also think one of the this dovetails back to like D&D campaigns never end, but one of the most innovative things maybe that they did with that new Archhag is gave it an anathema. Like there is a very particular thing you must do or bring with you or achieve in order for this thing to stay dead. It's very like Witcher coded, or the Dark Heart of Strahd. The vampire will rise again if you don't get him in his coffin. Like that is cool storytelling, because that puts your players in a position like, okay, we've won this fight, looted all the stuff. Do we care enough about the people around us, the rest of the world, to continue to intervene here, or are we going to ride off into the sunset and, I don't know, retire with our ill-gotten gains?
Yeah, and I think that is one of the key components that could really make D&D better, is if there were more monsters that had that end game mechanic built in. If every monster had some variation on the Lich's Phylactery or the Hag's Anathema, right? So that there's a specific in game for a lot of these big bad monsters. And that if you had more of that design, I think it would make it easier to be a DM and easier to come up with solid endings and solid stories for your campaign. And that's kind of the point of my Hags and Witches video.
Everyone go check that out. I'm gonna stop mining Brad's previous content for Jim has spoken. He's got the crook out. It's showtime at the Apollo. We're out of time. Appreciate everybody watching. Jim, I appreciate you. Please stop eating the food in Fey Muncie. Brad, thanks for hanging out with me every Friday. Everybody.
Thanks, everybody.